I think it's true. We don't have nearly the depth of talent, but it is increasingly easy to recruit here. And there's enough core. Used to be, people didn't want to move here because if that company wasn't successful, what was I going to do next? It's quite different now. There is a core platform underneath. There's a core set of entrepreneurs and executives, and you can recruit fairly easily. Do we have to recruit? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't all exist here. We're just not nearly that size, but it's increasingly easier to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I just moved out 9 months ago with another partner of mine. So, I mean, I'm still getting my feet wet around here, but I've told several of you in the audience today, I keep waking up going, when's the balloon going to be off the rose? This place rocks. Why would I ever want to be in the Silicon Valley? Why would you ever want to start a company in the Silicon Valley? No, I'm not going to tell you. I'm just telling you folks, right? And this isn't being taped, right? No, but exactly. Oh, hi, Boston. No, but I mean, honestly, I was asked the other day, I was telling you this in a seminar, how do we make Boulder like the Silicon Valley? And I was like, why the hell would you want to make Boulder like the Silicon Valley? Why would you want to make Denver? I mean, yeah, we've got our issues, but we could sit here and I could go on for 2 hours about all the problems it is about being a VC or being a company in the Silicon Valley. So, on the margin, okay, I've been here 9 months, so this is kind of what you will. To me, this is an easier place to start a company. It's cheaper, right, to build and start a company. It's easier to get good VCs who are really going to work at the companies. I mean, everybody up on this, you're right, VCs are lazy, but I'll tell you, they're certainly not working in Boulder. They may be in this Silicon Valley, getting their transmissions fixed on their Ferraris, but the folks out here seem to really want to put in an honest day's work. So, let's not make it all doom and gloom. This is a great place from everything I've seen, and I think it's easier than the Bay Area.
Yeah, I also moved out here just a few years ago, and I was at a venture capital firm. I spent 6 years in San Francisco and 2 years specifically at a firm out there, and there's a lot of drawbacks there too. I find that the employees here are much more loyal. They don't hop companies like out in the Bay. That's a big deal when you're in an early stage company. Is the core team, the core engineering team, going to kind of be together? Or are you going to be kind of pulling bits and pieces every 9 to 12 months, rotating your team? That's really hard to do when you're building a product. So I've been very pleasantly surprised here. The technical capabilities here are unmatched. They're excellent, top notch. The one area that I think, and even the CEO ranks, I think is fairly strong. We do tend to recruit. We do national searches, and sometimes we find people here, and sometimes we pull people from outside of the region. The one area that I think we are a little bit weaker on, that is strengthening, but we still aren't quite at the Bay or Boston, is kind of strategic marketing. It's the gap between, there's a lot of really good technologists here that are smart technologists who just want to go build product because they think that's what the market wants. A good company goes and understands what the market wants and then builds that. So the marketing drives the technology, and that's not the case so much here from what I've seen. In the Bay, they're really methodical about that. So that's one area that I think we need to work on a little bit. But we're recruiting. As we recruit more and more people out here in that role, they want to stay and do different companies. So that's something I think will build up over time.
I would just echo Chris's comments, especially about the marketing piece. And I actually do have some domain expertise in that area. In fact, these guys at Sequel held a little, a cocktail party or something around marketing for other VCs in the area, because it really is a major gap. I ran a brand strategy firm here for 10 years, and literally every senior person I hired, I had to import from overseas or the East Coast or the West Coast, and it was pretty onerous. We spent a lot of money on recruiting, a lot of time, a lot of energy. And now that I'm sitting, in the dark side, I've noticed that our portfolio companies really do struggle to find people who have any kind of advanced or sophisticated marketing understanding. For the most part, there's some great people out here, but they really are of very high value as far as I'm concerned. And it's probably the area we're adding the most value to the companies we're investing in, just because they have great operators, typically great technology people, great CEOs, but the go-to-market piece is really a place where they struggle. we're really early stage, but we've made 4 investments, and I think we're investing earlier stage than these folks are as well, for the most part. I think, as far as we're concerned, you can sort of see the hunger and the energy of these entrepreneurs, and you got to give them the shot to run the thing. But we're really upfront when we're discussing with them their role in the future. And we just like to ask them how far they envision themselves leading the company, and then trying to knit that back to their background and their experience, and to kind of set expectations early on. If they can move beyond that, great. But if not, we really like to have an upfront understanding that if this thing really takes off, we're going to need to bring in outside management. On the At Last company that I sat on the board of, we had to bring in outside management at a certain point, and it was the right thing to do. The entrepreneur is an incredibly creative person and wonderful at, vision, but he wasn't an operator. They needed an operator.
Yeah, I mean, to ask the question, I'd say that most of our management teams get swapped out over time. The question to ask is, was that voluntary or involuntary? And it's actually a very small set that's involuntary. I mean, most people who start companies don't want to run companies. Starting and building a company is a whole different animal than running a company. I think, we could probably all talk about why we do early stage. I think it's a combination of, we think those are attractive returns, but I bet you a lot of us, it's fun, right? It's not so fun sitting on a big company that's doing great, and that's cool, but you get to sit there and everybody comes in and talks about 409A evaluations and SOX compliance and accounting, and suddenly you're like, well, what am I doing here? So, as much as we have that, and we've got a vested stake, you find with the entrepreneurs that, there's not a ton of people who have an interest in really starting a company and then taking it all the way through.
And that's the hard work of early stage investing. We do wind up in a lot of cases needing to bring in a new CEO. I think, as Sandy was saying, though, you go into it and you have an honest conversation with the entrepreneur going in, what that might look like. You give them a chance, but you have to do that. And for us, it's somewhat of a measure how often the founder stays. Did you treat him, were you upfront, him or her, upfront enough about it that they want to stay at that company and continue building it and continue learning, so that maybe next time they're the recycled entrepreneur that gets to stay to be the CEO. But it is the work of early stage venture. You wind up needing to make management changes. And the example I always, entrepreneurs are often frustrated, right? Because it feels like a catch-22. Well, how am I going to get you want an experienced entrepreneur, how am I going to get the experience if you don't do it? And why do you guys do that? And then you can just give the simple example of the first time you did a PowerPoint presentation. How long did it take you to make your first PowerPoint presentation? How long did it take you to do your second one? And in a lot of these companies, sometimes time really matters, and you don't have enough time to let the entrepreneur try everything for the first time and take that amount of time. And that's an analogy people get. Now, again, it's great if they stay because they're a real emotional piece of the company, and they have a lot of value. And so I think it's how you change out your management teams and continue working with your founders.
Yeah, the point about voluntary leaving is really important. We rarely, when we get rid of someone, it's usually because it's no. There's a point. There's a point to this. You're usually replacing them, and they're usually finding another position in the company. Typically, the people we fund, because they're very early stage, are more technical, so they're more right to be the CTO, not in bringing a CEO. We also really focus on, if you start a company, you're going to own a lot of the company, so you should think of yourself as a large investor. You probably are the largest single investor as an individual. So the question is, what's success for you? That's one of the questions we ask very early in the process. What do you want to do? What's your goal? Because I talk to people all the time and say, you know what, given the product you have and give it the market you're going after and give it what you personally want to do, you probably shouldn't raise venture capital. You build, a smaller company that you sell for a smaller amount, which is great because you own the whole thing. You exit at $20 million. That's awesome as an entrepreneur, but that's not what VCs are looking for. So just understanding where everyone is early on in the process and what do they think success is really important. We spend a lot of time with that.
Yeah, I think specifically on the management change issue, every early stage company is going to have management change. Whether it works well or not is really up to the entrepreneur. And we'll only tend to get involved in deals where the entrepreneur is self-aware, has a realistic assessment and understanding what they're good at and what they're not good at. And let's face it, we've all got strengths and weaknesses. We don't tend to back entrepreneurs that don't have that realistic assessment on the front end. And I think all of us have seen too many situations where those management changes are painful. We look to avoid them, and it all comes down to what the entrepreneur understands their long-term role in the company can be.